Hello lovelies, I'm Christina and today I'm giving you my July wrap-up. So for the month of July I read 6 physical books, I listened to 1 audiobook, and I read a book on my Kindle. Let's jump into it. So the first book that I read in the month of July was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This is a fiction novel split into 12 parts where you followed a cast of 12 characters, and they all live in Britain. It spans over 100 years while they are all kind of searching for their place or searching for something, and all of the stories are also somewhat intertwined. I absolutely adored this. It was just so heartwarming, heartbreaking. It was giving me all the feels, and I was rooting for so many of these characters, and seeing how they all kind of connected and intertwined was really well executed. Highly recommend. Ended up giving it 5 teacups. The next book that I read on my Kindle, and that was one that I read for review on Readsy Discovery. I am a Readsy book reviewer, so I get to go through their pages and pick books that I want to read for review, and then they send me it for free in exchange for an honest review. So the book that I chose this time around was Beware of Greeks Bearing Gifts by Christodoulou. This is a horror novel. It is about Susan and her family. They have lost their 2-year-old son, and Susan has kind of lost her will to live. But then one day Susan's Greek husband comes home and he has this proposal for them all to go on a family vacation, them 2 and their 3 kids, to Greece, to his family home, which has a really dark backstory to it. And there's a lot of things that go wrong and a lot of weird things that happen in this house while they are there. I loved this book. It read like watching a really creepy horror movie. There's just so much going on. You're constantly asking yourself what is real and what is not. And it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. Highly recommend that one. The only thing I will say about it is that it felt like it wrapped up a bit quickly at the end, and I kind of felt like I had some questions unanswered after finishing it, but still really enjoyable. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5. Next up, I read Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. This is the story of 25-year-old Queenie, who is a Jamaican British woman living in London, and she just broke up with her boyfriend, and she's trying to kind of navigate around where she wants to go, what she wants to do, how she can get her boyfriend back, and then going through the whole world of dating and meeting men and making not so wise choices as one often does. I've heard a lot of people comparing this to Bridget Jones. I feel like that is really unfair to Queenie and to Carty-Williams, because Queenie and Bridget Jones are 2 so incredibly different characters. Just because they are 2 single women living in London doesn't make this story anything like Bridget Jones's diary. It's just completely different. And Queenie is such a complex character that goes through a lot. It goes to some really dark places. She is struggling with some mental issues, and it's just a completely different story. Whilst Bridget Jones's diary is really funny and entertaining and a good laugh and somewhat sad at times, but still it's way more lighthearted. And not to say that loneliness and feeling lonely while being single isn't something that can be really difficult to go through, but I think this book touches on some really deeper subjects around mental health and mental issues, as well as the being single and lonely and insecure and trying to find oneself after coming out of a relationship. So I really, really enjoyed Queenie. I was so rooting for her, and it was so funny to see how she interacted with her girlfriends and seeing how they made some really unwise choices that makes you just get so frustrated. But that's what makes these characters feel very real to life, because they're not perfect. They make mistakes. It was just really interesting, complex, and funny as well, and I ended up giving it 5 out of 5. Next up, we have the audiobook that I listened to in July, and that was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. So this is the story of a young woman who finds out at the age of 25 that she has inherited this house where when she was a baby she was found while everyone else in the house was dead. So it was kind of a cult thing going on in this house, and in this story we get to jump back and forth in time to when everything was going on in this house and to her trying to unravel this mystery and find out what really happened to her and the family that she had in this house. I thought the premise was interesting. I saw some of it coming. There were some twists and turns that was really interesting, but for some reason this story didn't completely grab me. I don't know why. It is creepy, interesting, but I wasn't really invested in any of the characters. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we have Writers and Lovers by Lily King. If you followed my vlogs, you know that I've talked about this quite a lot already, and I've posted about it on Instagram. Yeah. My love for this book is not well concealed, to say the least. I just fell in love with it. I heard about this book on Noelle Gallagher's channel, and she was raving about it, and the way she talked about it just made it impossible to not get myself a copy and see what this was all about. It is the story about Casey Peabody, who is 31 years old. She has recently lost her mother. She is an aspiring writer. She's trying to get her first novel to completion and then to publish it. I think that's one of the main reasons why I just fell in love with this story and with Casey, is that I could relate so well to the struggle with being an aspiring writer and with dealing with all the things that a woman deals with while she's single and trying to find her place. I just thought this was a very well executed romance that, in the same way that Queenie did, touches on some really deep and complex subjects. And that's what I love to see in contemporary and romance novels, is not just a light-hearted romance that makes you giggle a bit, although that can be funny as well, but I tend to fall more in love with the more complex stories that has characters with a lot of depth and who has issues, who are human, if that makes sense. So yes, absolutely fell in love with Writers and Lovers, ended up giving it 5 out of 5. So the 3 last books that I have are the books that I read during the reading rush. So if you've seen my reading rush vlog, you've kind of already seen my thoughts around these books, but I'm still gonna go through them anyways. The first one I read was Heartburn by Nora Ephron. This is the story of Rachel. She is 8 months pregnant when she finds out that her husband is cheating on her and is in love with another woman. And it's kind of just a story of her navigating her life, trying to get it back on track in a way before this baby arrives. She's also a food blogger, so there's a lot of recipes and talks about food in this book as well. I thought it was funny. I thought it did a good job of making a horrific experience or something so just awful and sad become really funny and entertaining. But as I mentioned in my Reading Rush vlog, I just couldn't get with this character because she had some views and some things she said about other characters that were just really sexist and racist, and it just put me off. So even though I kind of enjoyed the story overall, it ruined my experience with this book. And I ended up giving it a 2.5 out of 5. And next up, we have The Shining by Stephen King. I know, it's been a long time coming. I don't know why I haven't read this before now, but anyways, now I have. As probably all of you know, it is the story about the Torrance family who goes up to the Overlook Hotel, and they are going to stay there during the winter season when the hotel is down for business, and to kind of just do maintenance on the hotel. And then the hotel kind of takes on its own entity. There's so much story to what's been going on at the Overlook Hotel. It just takes over Jack Torrance's life and makes him go a bit crazy. I absolutely loved reading this. It was so fun to actually get the real story behind the movies, and we are definitely going to rewatch the movie soon because I haven't seen it for quite a few years and Michael hasn't seen it yet. So we need to. Absolutely loved this horror story, and I ended up giving it 5 out of 5. And the last book that I read in the month of July, and the last book of the reading rush as well, was The Ghost Brigades by John Scalzi. The second book in the Old Man's War series, which I've talked about quite a few times because it's just becoming one of my favorite sci-fi series because it's so accessible and easily read sci-fi, even though it is quite complex and has really interesting world building. I just love this. I'm not going to say anything about the plot in this one because I don't want to spoil anything, but I've mentioned Old Man's War before, where it's the story of John Perry, who at the age of 75 enrolls in the army, where they uses his DNA to make him a new body. So they put his thoughts and his mind into this new body, and in exchange for that he has to serve the army for 10 years if he can survive that long, which most of them don't. So yes, it's very entertaining, it's funny, it's just, I'm in love with the series. I didn't fall completely in love with the second book as I did with the first book, probably because John Perry is not the main character in this one, and I think Perry is the character that really just made me fall in love with the first book, but I still really enjoyed it, and I am going to continue on with this series. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. So there you have it. Those are the books that I read in the month of July. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these, have any thoughts, or if you've read something recently that you think that I should check out. As always, I would love to know. I will also link to all of the books I've mentioned in the description box down below, so you can go check that out if you want to. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button and that bell button if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video soon. Goodbye!